So one of the things I've enjoyed about the Voluspa and interpreting it is not just doing these scenes and sort of creating illustrations of what's happening in the Voluspa, but also to create symbols and heraldry and to not quite so literal interpretations. So in verse 24, it talks about when the Aesir and the Vanir War ended and they made peace, that the Vanir defeated the Aesir, and that therefore all the gods would be worshipped equally. Is sort of the idea behind that. And so I started thinking in broad shapes, and so I knew I wanted a boat in there because the boat as a symbol, of course, is important. I mean, Vikings boats, the ship, but also specifically to the Vanir as both Njord and Frey are associated with the boat. The story of the king being delivered on the boat is a Vanic story, and then the sun wheel as well, being important to the gods, but also again being thought to be a Vanic symbol. There's some connection of the idea of Frey being associated with the rise of the sun and the growing of the wheat, and those sorts of things. Not that Frey was a sun god specifically, but that the sun wheel and the cycle of that was important. And so, but I wanted to make up the sun wheel by a sword and a spear. So again, the sword being more of one of Frey's symbols. He was known to have his magic dancing sword, and the spear being both one of Odin's symbols. Depending on the lore, sometimes it's one of Tyr's symbols as well, but a symbol of battle. And so then, delving deep within, the boat itself is made up of a boar, which is the symbol of Frey and Freya, the pig being of the Vanic gods, and the wolf, a symbol of Odin and of the Aesir. The rune Ansus, which is a symbol of spirituality, of wisdom, commonly associated with Odin, of course, but also in a broader sense, just representing the gods. And then the Volknut being another one of Odin's symbols. So, we have the sun wheel, which is sort of both symbols, but one of Vanic importance. The boat, very much a Vanic symbol, and then one of Odin's symbols. But wrapping around all this is the Midgard serpent, but the Midgard serpent, his horns connect to the boat and enwrap Ansus, and then at his base, his tail wrapping inside Odin's symbol, and this idea of infinity. And this is important to me because the myth cycle never ends. Ragnarak both has happened and never will happen and will one day happen, and it's a story, and the idea of cycles was so important to the lore and to this time period and that continuum. And so I wanted to represent that. And then finally, that within the boat, there are 2 spears piercing the boar and 3 spears piercing the wolf. And this serves 2 purposes to me. The 2 spears represents that both during the war there was damage to both sides, but that ultimately the Vanir won, and so they're only pierced twice, whereas the wolf is pierced 3 times. But there's also another meaning behind this to me, which is that when the gods were exchanged, they did sort of a prisoner exchange, or not even prisoner is the right word, but they exchanged gods. And so Frey and Freya and Njord came to the Aesir. So they got 3, whereas Hod and Mimir, or Mim, went to the Vanir. And so it's both the representation of winning and losing the war, but that there was also this exchange to bind peace. And so I hope what this symbol shows to people, what they get from it, is that it is a symbol of peace after war. And so hard-fought peace, hard-won peace that doesn't come easy. Then also the idea of infinity and the symbols of all the different gods, both Vanir and Aesir. And anyway, it's a piece that I took a great deal of meaning from, and I thought you guys might enjoy knowing a little bit more about it. So I hope you've enjoyed this little talk. So, thanks.